Good evening, world. My name is Bruce Hecht. Welcome to another Candlelight Live from Home. I've been reading a lot of Jordan Peterson over the past few years, and his explanations for why we dream have been helpful. You see, I've been having this recurrent dream for years, always something to do with the Children's Hospital in Toronto where I trained. So I started writing out some of the experiences that I've had, adventures and misadventures alike. It's been helpful. Now, this may come as a surprise to some, but there are, in fact, differences in career preference between men and women. Differences which are not socially constructed. Biological differences in career preference? Can you believe it? It turns out that women are more likely than men to prefer a career involving people, and men are more likely than women to prefer a career involving things, even in Scandinavia, in the most egalitarian societies. Engineering schools are full of men, and the medical schools have been taken over by women. This was certainly my experience. It's funny that some people don't like hearing this. Of course, these are generalizations, and none of it applies to individuals, and there are highly technically skilled and compassionate female doctors, like Gwendolyn. She was a good girl. She loved her mama, loved Jesus, and America too. She was a good girl. She was crazy about Elvis. She loved horses, and her boyfriend too. It's a long day living in Reseda. There's a freeway running through my yard. Oh, and I'm a bad boy, 'cause I don't even miss her. And I'm a bad boy for breaking her heart. But I'm free falling. Oh, and I'm free falling. I wanna glide down over Mulholland. I wanna write her name in the sky. I want to free fall into nothing. I want to leave this world for a while. Free falling. Oh, I'm free. I was visiting a musician friend in the intensive care unit recently. Nothing to do with the virus. And there was a code blue emergency in the next room. The patient had stopped breathing. And as the crowd of people gathered at the bedside, I recalled my own medical training. And I again thought about Gwendolyn, my South African, 5'1", 9-month pregnant supervising senior resident. She was competent as hell. Always the first one to the scene of an emergency. And an incredible role model. She was there at the first code blue I'd ever had any responsibility for. When I ran in, she was already at the head of the bed breathing for the patient and organizing the support staff. She glanced up at the monitor. No heartbeat. "Hecht, compressions!" She gently commanded, being aware of and exploiting my special interest in the heart. I took my position over the child's chest and began cardiac compressions. A bit slower, that's it. 1 and 2 and 3, and she conducted my movements with her words. "Watch the blood pressure line on the monitor. See how you're keeping the blood pressure up with your strong compressions?" She calmly reassures me. "As long as you're compressing properly," she said, "the patient is still alive." I was keeping the patient alive with these hands. Pretty heady stuff. Next to arrive was Sheila, a British doctor who ran into the room panting. "Aye, Gwendolen," she said, glancing at the gravid abdomen pressing against the patient's head. "You're up the duff," nervously teasing about Gwendolen's near-term pregnancy. "Sheila, take the bag," Gwendolen ordered, simultaneously ignoring the idiom about her belly and acknowledging Sheila's interest in pulmonology. She took the breathing bag and Gwendolen moved to the foot of the bed. But Queen Elizabeth was having some trouble coordinating, holding the child's jaw and making the bag squeeze properly together while at the same time breathing for the child, so Gwendolen gently moved back in, taking the bag, explaining the importance of the neck position and the jaw thrust maneuver, while at the same time calling for and then expertly placing a properly sized breathing tube through the patient's mouth. She secured the tube with an adhesive tape in a large X across the patient's face. "There you go," she says to the still panting Sheila, handing back the airway management responsibilities and resuming her directing position at the foot of the bed. At this point, the ABCs of an arrest scenario were all covered: airway, breathing, and circulation. And then in rushes Gabrielle, a bright and brainy, gorgeous, dark-haired French-Canadian girl with blue eyes like glacial ice. "Merde," she whispered as this child had been her admission a few nights back. "Gabby, put in a large bore IV," Gwendolen ordered, handing her the necessary supplies. But Gabrielle wasn't very technically skilled, and Gwendolen could see her fumbling. She called for an interosseous needle, and after a few quick wipes of brown soap on the leg closest to her, Gwendolen thrust what looked like a silver railroad spike through the front of the bone in the child's lower leg. She efficiently drew a blood sample and administered medications, which did manage to get the heart beating again. She attached the IV tubing and ran a hanging bag of IV solution as fast as it would go. So there we were, the full arrest team, assembled and working together, having finally engaged in a real-life arrest scenario. Later, Gwendolen took us aside and we reviewed the circumstances leading up to the event and what needed to be done to prevent a reoccurrence. She never missed an opportunity to create a teaching moment. We'd saved the child's life, or at least Gwendolen had, sequentially playing every role, and she wanted us to know why it had become necessary. This was not just technical teaching. She said, "The ABCs are there, but you've got to learn that it's your job to take action." She was teaching us how to fight against death. Gwendolen delivered her baby a week later over Thanksgiving, and she'd never missed a call night and never voiced a pregnancy-related complaint, though I did hear from her husband that she was having some kind of postnatal problem with low energy and moodiness. Needless to say, this was easy to understand, even for Superwoman, given the perpetual sleeplessness and the incessant demands of a newborn. At least that's as far as I understood it. It was nearing the end of December when Gwendolen was going to make her triumphant return, and she volunteered to take call on Christmas Eve. I always volunteered to do Christmas Day since the hospital is usually quiet and serene, and I needed the study time. I was looking forward to catching up a bit with Gwendolyn at handover, and we'd arranged to meet in the resident lounge. I arrived early on a leaden, overcast Christmas morning to an emergency room swarming with ambulances. Cursing to myself that my anticipated study time was obviously going to be taken up doing paperwork all day, I took the elevator 11 floors up to the large resident lounge, anticipating a story about a bomb scare or a chemical spill or some other catastrophe. But of course, Gwendolyn wasn't there. Of course, she was going to put herself in the middle of the action, particularly after being away so long. So I wandered down to the emergency room to take handover of the hospital resident responsibilities. Another noisy arrest scenario was going on in the treatment room, and a not very Christmassy number of senior staff were involved. I saw Gabrielle's icy blue eyes staring over at me as I approached the nurse's station. The glacial eyes were wet with tears. She explained that for the past month, Gwendolyn had been suffering severe postpartum depression, and after a Christmas morning call to her husband, she climbed out of a resident lounge window and dove off, face first, to the pavement below. This was a few hours ago, and they were still working on her in the treatment room. I looked over, and I could see the head of the emergency department was directing and calling for another round of medications. Another senior staff member was bagging through a secure tube in her airway and adhesive tape X across her face, her chest moving appropriately. Someone else was doing tired chest compressions, clearly exhausted by the prolonged effort to save Gwendolyn. She had taught me to take action, so I moved in, nudging the compressions guy out of the way, and took over control of her blood pressure. Gwendolyn had taught me, as long as you're compressing properly, the patient is still alive. There's a lot I don't remember about that Christmas. I can't remember them telling me to stop. I do remember the strange silence. I remember the tears when her husband came with the new baby. I don't remember ever going home.